Alright, now we are in Substance Painter. Let's drag and drop our FBX file. I'm using 4K as the document resolution. No unwrapping is needed, and the rest of the materials is looking good. Rest of the settings are looking good. So we are at the UV screen. Alright, now it's our 3D model here. And let me check the texture set. We have the 6 of them, which is good. And let's try to bake the ambient occlusion and the rest of the normals like this. We don't need any ID. Curvature and position thickness is also can be ticked because they are used on various dirt generators within the software. So normal and worst space normal is also need to be checked. I'm clicking to the bake and let's wait. Alright, now we have the ambient occlusion and the rest of the mesh maps baked, and also it has got a good look right now. The tricky part about these mesh maps is the ambient occlusion. Since we are having some inner sides within the screen glass, we don't need any ambient occlusion there. So for this material IDs, I will select the screen and delete the ambient occlusion that has been generated for this material ID, because the glass is in front of this screen and made it occluded with fully black, which is a problem. I'm deleting it that way. And also for the masked glass, we have the same problem, because this time the screen itself occluded that one with a black result. And one final touch on the glass. Let me see. Since this doesn't have a back part, it won't be occluded, so I'm leaving it that way. Alright, so let's switch our material type to PBR metal rough with alpha blending. This can show the opacity channel in the viewport, and it will help us like that. So I have just closed some of my screens. Let me see. Right. Yeah. I will try to fix my screen layout. I'm not very good at this UI customization type of things, so sorry for that. I think I'm going to use this like that. Alright, in the texture set, also we can move this to the right side, I suppose. Yeah, it's better. So let's start by setting the screen, the glass as a transparent. So I'm adding a fill layer, deleting the existing blank layer, and from texture sets I'm going to add a channel named opacity. So I want to control the transparency of this glass. For this fill layer I am enabling the opacity channel and drop down the opacity level around, let's say, 0.29. So this makes us to see through this glass because we are going to create textures for the objects behind this glass. So I'm leaving this glass material like this for now and move on with the body. The body part will be easy to texture, but the brands and other details will be costing time for us. So for the fill layer for this body, I start by a black color. Next I will be adding another fill layer with roughness and height is defined. For the height I am increasing it in a slightly high value, and for the roughness I am dropping the roughness value. Let's add a black mask and add a white noise to create a grainy plastic. You see? So now we can adjust the height value to control this graininess on the object. Nice. So it makes the general plastic look recognized in a good way. You see that we are having UV seams at the corners. This means we need to set this white noise in a triplanar projection. So you see that the tiling will be much better on this stage. Trying to see if we have a seam or not. Some skewness occurs, but this is caused by the triplanar projection settings, which is mostly caused by the blending between the different axes. So hardness value controls it better. Nice. Now we have this grainy plastic on the general surface. We can move on by the rest of the objects. For example, since we are in the designing stage for the colors of this object, we can switch between different material IDs to see how this object generally look. For example, for the secondary objects, we can group different objects in together because you see that we have grouped all of them into one material ID, but we need to have different specifications or the types of materials for each one. For that, I will add some groups first, deleting the first blank layer and adding a group of plastic. Adding another one as metal, which means the screws. Adding a third one for the labels. Alright, I'm trying to see if we have any other type of object. Looking like not. So for the metal, let's add a black mask and adding a paint layer to group the screws for this folder. For that, I will just select the polygon selection tool and set the UV chunk mode and paint those as white. You will see that all of the rest of the objects are black, but once I select those like this, I have the screws masked as white as they should be. So our the other object that needs to be as metal is just these materials, these objects. I'm going to select those and paint those as white. Right. I'm switching to the orthographic mode. Nice. And switching back to black to repaint the back area. And this bracelet should be metallic. Let's paint all of them first and paint the rest with black to remove from the mask. Let's see if we have selected some additional polygons like this one, and great. And this is metallic as well. I'm trying to see if we are having any selection to be added to this group. No. So this is the alright. Now we are moving the one group we have painted the mask for to the bottom, because we are going to use this mask as an anchor on the rest of the mask creation processes. So I have added an anchor point, and this time I will adding another black mask for the labels, adding a paint layer, and by here I will just set the labels as white. Nice. Great. I have selected all the labels and trying to be sure about if I selected the corner polygons as well. And now I am adding another anchor point for the labels and moving it under the plastic. So finally I'm adding another black mask. This time I'm adding a fill first and set it to white. This means all of the objects set white by this fill layer. And now I am adding two additional fill layers and use the blending mode as subtract, because I will subtract the rest of the anchored paintings from this one. And I will define the anchor points one by one. For this one metal, and for this one I will set is labels. So once we subtracted it from the objects, it looks more or less like this. I see that we are having some missing surfaces on this object. Let me see the cause of it. Actually the polygons looking there. Let me hide the main body, and yes, we are having these faces removed from the object. Let me open up Modo to see if they are there or not. By the way, we have grouped the objects like this. And yeah, there's an intersection with the main body there. Possibly these faces has been removed by Solidworks once it exported it. So this means they are not be shown through the edges because there is no seam between there, which works fine for us, and we can move on without fixing it. It's nothing much a big problem there. Alright, now we can switch to the secondary objects, and for the plastic part we can add a starting color. So let's start by try some different colors here and there. Red looks cool actually with black. Let me make it a little bit darker. Actually, I like it that way, so I'm keeping it. This will be a color definition, so I'm removing rest of the channels. And also I will be adding different colors for the other buttons. For example, we are having these ones, and this means we will be defining different colors for each of the buttons because they all function in a different way. So my suggestion there would be duplicating this color channel in 3 parts and define RGB colors for each of the groups. I'm adding a black mask. For that, I'm going to paint the top 2 with white. And these will be the red buttons. Adding another paint layer. This time masking these 2 with the green. For the third one, I am masking these 2 buttons. So let's change the colors. I'm just sliding the hue for the red because I want to keep the general dark color match with the rest of the buttons. So changing the hue means keeping the saturation and the value or the intensity of the color in the same way. So red is more or less like that. And for the blue, we are changing the wrong layer, by the way. Let's roll back. Right, for the blue, let's use this as blue. So the next move I will make is to change the color of the right ones from the left ones. All right. I'm adding another black mask and adding a paint layer and select the right side buttons. And by here I will set a color channel as fully white, and there I will use this as linear dodge and drop the intensity. So let's try different blending modes to make it much more saturated, for example. Color dodge is not what I'm looking. This makes it darker. Difference is not a good idea. Yeah, soft light is something I'm looking for to make it much more saturated in a way. But the intensity of it is not what I look for. Alright, now we are trying something to create a variation between these buttons. So let me see different blending modes. Possibly the best solution is just using a soft light to make those in a much colored way, but still not having a nice result. How about saturation blending? Doesn't work nice. How about making these darker? So let's keep them like that, but I'm going to increase the saturation of these buttons to max. Like this. Actually, let's change the tone here. Right. For the blue, let's keep it a little bit down. Alright, now I can adjust this subtraction color. I don't like, actually it doesn't resulted with the thing I had in my mind. So possibly the best way is to use custom colors for each of them. So I like these colors for the starter, and now I have a mask for the top three. And I am setting this paint layer as a multiply, and here I will set a color manually with a normal blending. For example, for the right part, and also let's add another paint to define the first button here. Alright, now I can set the color different than red. something like this. Alright, let's create duplicates for this and change the paint layer with black and then red. Also for this one, like this. Let's change the color like this. And for the last one, setting the color like this. Trying to get used to the look, but it doesn't help me much to accept the result still. Maybe something with the similar colors would work better. Like this. Let's change this one. Yeah. So we have two different saturation for each of the buttons this way. Maybe acceptable, I don't know, but looks okay for now. And for the plastic part, I am moving on to create other colors for the other plastic objects. For example, the black. I'm disabling rest of the material channels, adding a black mask, adding a paint to define the black color for the objects. For example, this frame should be black. This volume wheel would better black. The frame of the audio jack would be black, and also the S-video should be black. And let me select this as a black color. Nice. We should set this as metallic as well, but first let me paint these areas with black without missing it. Nice. Now we have black color for the desired areas. Also, you see that we are having this area with ambient occlusion. I can manually edit the ambient occlusion channel if I want to create an animation on this volume wheel, because otherwise we will be having this stripe that generated by the ambient occlusion baking will be visible on rotating the shape. So let's keep it that way. For the metallic part, I will also set this as metal. Great. Let's assign a simple metal material from library for this part. I think I was using steel rough on this kind of objects, which is directly looking good on many cases. can make the color a little bit dark for this steel. Let's keep it this way. And add another layer, another fill layer actually, for the secondary colors for the metal. Let's see, let's keep it with this color first and add a black mask. Now I adjust I define a mask for the parts that I want the related metal to be look darker. Let's add a paint layer. Since I have these white parts as metal, I need to paint the ones I want it darker. I started painting the screws first. And let me see if I want any part to be darker. No, I don't. So by here in this base color, I can set this fill layers base color channel as a subtract. And now I will set the opacity in a lower value. To adjust the darkness amount by subtracting a white color from the metal color. So my screws are now black, like this, and the remaining metal parts are stayed as white. We can also adjust the color a little bit more. Right. Can decrease the subtraction amount like this. Nice. It's forming in a way, so let's keep working on different areas. For example, for the plastic part, we can assign the same grain texture that we have used on the main body, which was that grain effect. Right, I'm copying and pasting it over the plastic part. So switching to the secondary objects, and under the plastic I am pasting this, and this time I have this grainy effect on these plastic parts as well. I like this red, by the way, but I want a yellow stripe here. Let's add another fill layer. Let's set an orange yellow mixture here, and also I will add a height map in a slightly negative value, switching to the height map blending mode from the layer section and setting the height as normal, because I want to override the grain part with this orange. And I add a black layer and add a fill layer here. Now I will take a brush, set a color for this paint. Since we have painted this area, I can now adjust it by the levels, because the hardness can be adjusted in a way. Let's adjust the height level. We don't need that intense negative value because this time it's got pixelated. All right. So it's looking much better this way. And also we can use a shape to control this as well. For example, I add a fill layer, set it as fully white. Let me hide it first and try to see where did I paint it like that. And it's here, you see. So I'm enabling the fill layer I created, setting the UV wrap as none, and now I have a rectangle to control over the UV section. So let's move this rectangle around anywhere with any rotation. And by hiding the paint layer I made, now I can place this rectangle to anywhere I want, like this. And now I can add additional filters, like first a blur to smooth out the result. And let's adjust the width of this rectangle. And after that blur, I will add a levels to compress the colors. Like this. Now you see that we have a non-destructive workflow once again with positioning this slider, and it can be adjustable right now to control this shape or color for that plastic part, for that indicator. Now I'm going to set the color to anything I want, like this. Alright, so we have the power button set like this, and we are moving on with the start and select buttons. We can make those look like rubber. For that, I'm going to add another fill layer which will have just color and roughness values, because I want to keep the grain, and the color channel should be something near to the black. And increasing the roughness makes it look like kind of rubber. Also, we can change the color of those, but let me first isolate these by using a mask as well. Normally I should rename these layers to find what I'm looking for in an easy way, but I am too lazy and it's a speedrun, so I'm skipping this part. Right. We have this color, and now we can adjust the color for this start and select function buttons. Maybe the gray is the much more formal way of color definition for these buttons. And I will add another. Actually, let's add a height channel and set the height as normal for these buttons to remove the height, but I will change decrease the opacity of the height channel to control the graininess amount for these buttons. So this way they look more like having less grain because of they are rubber or silicone. Alright, I want to add a non-grainy part for this button, which I think will look much nicer with a roughness and height value which will be overridden by this layer, like that. So adding a black mask, adding a paint layer, and by here in UV chunk mode I will select the center area to be look like not affected by this grainy surface and having a nice roughness. Really cool. Our first fill layer doesn't have a roughness channel, so let's define it. Also height and other channels would be nice to define at the first stage, so otherwise you end up with alpha transparent channels. For example, if I hide this fill layer, you will see that this button has a transparent roughness channel, so which is a not good way to create textures for this purpose. Of course, normally alpha transparent materials that lies within different color channels is good for using in the game industry, like using the alpha channel individually and the rest of the RGB channels as masks as well. Alright, so we have nearly completed the plastics parts. Checking to see. We can change the volume slider color in a different color as well. Let me switch to the color channel and trying to find the layer. I defined this volume button, this one. It also defined the color for this part as well, so I am creating a duplicate for this gray color and add another paint layer for mask to isolate this part, this volume wheel. Nice. Our volume wheel doesn't have a back surface. I'm trying to find the reason for it. Alright. That means a little problem, because possibly we have assigned this surface to the main body material ID. Yes, you will see that this disk belongs to the other material ID. Normally it will be a problem, but I try to fix it within the painting software, so won't bother with it to move the UVs to the other material ID within Modo to move it back. Alright, we are back. Some camera issue has been solved, so I'm back with the recording. Alright, now we have creating different color for the wheel. but since the wheels one part has been moved to a wrong UV set, let's try to fix it first, because let me see the shape. Alright, you see that we have defined this material ID with this wheel. So I'm selecting the whole set and define the secondary objects material back to it. Alright, so since these are now in the same material ID, the added faces that we have forgot to add to this material ID is now overlapping with the current UV tile. We need to fix that, of course. Now I'm selecting the secondary objects material with the whole set with it, and now for that I need to select this newly added faces to this in this group. So since we are having some closed circles that causes that makes us to use the UV area not effectively, has been used to get this placed for this newly added faces. So now after positioning this right here, it will be easier for us to reassign or re-export the texture. Now I'm saving the project file once again and exporting this file to overwrite the existing one. And in the painter, I will first save the project and then, sorry, not settings. From the edit project configuration, I will reselect the same handheld. Now the new file. So I will keep the preserve strokes positions on the mesh selected, and now I am re-importing the same mesh, but this time you will see that, let me check. So all the materials reassigned, and you will see that we will be having this whole volume wheel now stays in the existing, now stays in the same material group. So let's rebake the textures, mesh maps, because it's important since we have changed the UVs. Actually, we just need to bake the two material IDs, but I will just rebake everything. Actually, let's cancel it since we have removed some of the ambient occlusions. So I will just bake secondary objects and the main body. There's no point to bake all of them, to be honest. Right, now I'm rebaking the main body material because we have changed the UV of this one as well. Alright, now everything looks fine. So we have the volume wheel as whole. And now I will just change the color for it. Let me see. which objects are assigned. Yes, these are the I saw a wrongly painted area, so let's make it that way. Nice. And now for this wheel, I'm going to change the color of it. Maybe we can keep the red color for this one as well. I'm switching to the base color mode. Take this color with the picker. Yeah, it looks nice actually. So it can work like this. We have a wrong group here. Let me paint this area as well. Nice. And we have all the ports nicely defined. So we have a problematic here, problematic place here on this material group, which belongs to the main body. I'm going to create another material for this area. For that, I will rename this as power button hole. And for that, I'm moving it upwards. And now let's see, from the height, I will set it to normal. I'm switching back to the base color, setting it as fully black. Roughness is fully rough, no need to normal channel. And metal, I'm setting the height as minimal, maybe a little bit. And let's assign a mask for this area. Yes. Alright, now it looks much better with a button slider, for a button slider here. And now we can add some detail for the battery hatch. And also we have a grip area here. Let me see if we can do anything for that. Maybe we can add a rubber panels here. What do you think? I'm adding a group, so adding a rubber panels, and there now I will add some fill layers to define a rubber look at this area. I'm setting a height. I'm switching to the height mode in the layer view, and I will change the normal blending mode of the height channel to normal. So I will add this height to a larger value. Let's set the opacity to a minimal level, in a half level. Alright, so need a high roughness. We need to change the height blending of this whole group as normal as well. If I set it to 100, there will be no grid, no grains. And if I set it like in the middle way, we will be having slightly grainy texture. Setting the roughness in a higher value, so it looks like kind of rubber right now. So now I will add a mask here to paint the rubber part. Let's see how it looks. Actually, before that, I want to add this painting to this layer and remove the mask of the group. Nice. Alright, for the rubber part, I'm going to let's check for some alpha shapes to use as a fill layer. So let me delete this paint layer and add a fill first. And let's check the library. I will look for the alpha shapes and try to see or find some panel-like shape here. Actually, it will be a primitive shape, but if I find it which looks in a better way, I will use it anyways. For example, this may work, but we need to make the positioning of it. I will set the UV wrap as none, scale down the shape. Now I will try to find the position of the area. Yes. I will duplicate this one and change the fill as fully white and set it as a multiply. This way it will allow me to adjust the boundary of this shape. Since the background of it doesn't exist, multiply doesn't work this way. But let's see if I can use something different. I will do a workaround by adding an anchor and reusing it with multiply this time. Let's set this to normal. And this way it will be easier for me to adjust the boundary of this shape. I'm not sure if this will work good or not, but I will just trying right now. Right. So now we can try anything instead of this shape wave. I'm looking for something diagonal. Possibly these will work well. Right. So for this height, we need to add some blurring to make some nice smooth edges. Like this. So this controls the height. But the color should be much more intense. And for that, I will use another anchor here. And add another fill. And remove the roughness and other kind of channels first. Now reassigning a high rough and black color to a new layer, and for that layer I will be using the anchor I created for the height, but I will adjust the intensity contrast of it by a level editor, a level graph, so it will be easier for me to make a sharp transition on this mask as you are seeing it here. Nice. So this way we have a panel here, but we need to have a nice secondary height map for the seams of this panel. So I'm decreasing the height here, and I will use another mask that uses the anchor point I have created previously. But there I will use another filter over this shape for histogram scan. So this way, right here, I will adjust the position. Actually, it's not working as a histogram select, so I need to subtract the same shape from it. Okay. So here I want to get a tiny edge like this. We can blur it a little bit. So this way we will get rid of the pixelated look. Nice. Even we can adjust the boundary a little bit like this, and by here we can adjust the height intensity to control the result better. So we have some rubber panels at the back which will be used for gripping the handheld better. But for the first height map, let me see where yes, this one, I will add a kind of wavy look by a Perlin noise to multiply it. Right, now we can adjust the roughness to see the normal map effect better. Alright, so here I will increase the height a little bit more. Actually, let's use this height as standard way, but first I will add an empty height map to control the grain independent from this layer. Alright, now I will just use this fill layer also here. Yes. Actually, it doesn't work because it's anchored. So I need to copy the whole set for that. Actually, it's not a good idea, but let's see what we can do about it. Let's delete this one. And leave the grains as they are, because it will cost us additional 5 or 6 moves, which will be pain if you ask me. So alright, now we have the wavy look on the height. We can adjust the scale of the noise, but the first look will be was great like this. And for this rubber part, let's adjust the roughness in a lower value first, but I will add another fill for the roughness result. So not here. I will add another fill under this layer. For the rough, I will add some cloud texture to get a much better rubber look on the object. We are on the height channel. Switch to the roughness. Nice. We can also change the color of this rubber part in a lighter value. this. But I want to increase the roughness intensity kind of high level. Yes. Right. Adjusting some parameters to get to a nicer result. So great, now we are having this panel here. And why don't we just duplicate it to have the same on the other side? So let me see where I have used this placement here. I will duplicate and set it as linear dodge add. But before that, I need to disable the mask I'm using, because I'm using the mask here. I need to copy the mask to the parts across the object. So what I'm going to do is moving the secondary shape to the area across the object here, and use the second shape, rotate it and place it here. Right. There's a problem around the layer layout. Let me fix it first. I will hide these. Right. Try to find the second one. Okay. Nice. I have placed the second shape to the corresponding area. And now I have a black fill. I have a rectangle that is placed here. I have another layer. Let me set it as normal and placed it right here. I set it as mask. So let's see what we got. All right. Yes, we need a secondary fill for this area. Now it works. All right. So one thing left, that I need to make the placement better, like this. All right. So let's check the result here. Okay, we move this a little bit to the left. Nice. All right, So we have the grip areas back here. So we can add some finger marks, fingerprints here and there, but that's a stage that we can work on when we are close to the finishing of the project. So checking what we have. All right, now let's go for the texts. So on the main body, we will be having some color applications for the texts of the buttons, of course. So I will add a height and move it slightly in a higher value, set the color as a gray or white, adding a black mask, adding a fill, and from now on I will be adding texts here. Let me look for font shape and use a nice text to use only for the texts. Let's start with this one. I will rename this text as select. I'm setting the UV wrap to none because I don't want it to be tiled. And change the position of the text to match with the related button. Let me switch to the material mode. Let's make it bold. And we will be having this text like this. This is the select button, and let's duplicate it and to set this as a start button. I'm setting the blending mode as max lighten and move this under here, and you will see that we set the texts for our buttons. Let me see if diagonal text works. I like this much better. Let me delete the second one to match the angles between these two. Right, very nice. Actually, this text size is too much. This size also can be put to this area as a horizontally, but I like the way it is right now. This angle just created a kind of effect, nice effect on the shape. So let's keep it that way. And now we are in the main body, and we have some texturing for this. Let me see. Alright, now I will add another fill layer to remove the grain. Sorry. From the certain areas. So for that, I'm just defining a height and roughness channel. Since we have given the noise or the grain look by the height channel, I'm setting this heights blending type as normal on this layer. And next I will add a mask and add a paint layer to define some areas to be not affected by the grain, like these parts. Since I'm in UV chunk mode and I unwrap the UVs in an automatic way, it just selects the areas that has a UV island per UV island that generated with a single part in the UV area. So that helps me easily select this kind of loops. So this workflow has some limitations, but also has some useful approaches inside. Alright, selecting these like that. We can also use rectangle tool to select and deselect the outer parts. I'm only concerned about the areas that can be seen easily. So let's remove this. Let me see the painted areas. Nice. I'm not sure if I should remove the grain right here. Let me see. Want to see that how it looks first. No, we can keep the grain at this frame. Alright, but we removed the grain from this area. Also our layer allows us to control the roughness, which should better be low like this. And let me see the whole device, which is good. And nice. Alright, black rubber looks much better. Great. So we are still working with the main body. At the back part, let's add some area to inform people about how many batteries that device needs. So I have a layer that we renamed as remove the grain. I can add another paint layer here to remove the grain at this area. For that, I'm not painting a rectangle here. I will use a fill layer to position that shape there. So it makes me control the shape in a better way, so more flexible way. So I'm adding another fill, set the UV wrap as none, setting the color as fully white, but in the UV window I will make the positioning over the battery hatch like this. Let me check the shapes for it, because I'm sure Painter has a nice rounded rectangle shape that we can use for this part. I'm searching for under the alpha. So square rectangle may be the thing we are looking for. No, it's not. So oh, actually a sharp corner looks much better. All right, so I made it horizontally centered somehow, so let's adjust it more. We have contrast like this. Nice. Great. Let's duplicate it and move one copy here. Nice. All right. So we have this shape. Let's adjust the height. A little bit in a negative way, like this. And my next step will be adding another layer for the texts. Hatch texts. For that, I will just use a height map, which will be in a positive value. Added a black mask, and I will add fill to define the texts I'm going to create for this area. Looking for font. Looking for a nice font to use. This looks nice, so I am setting the UV wrap as none for this one as well, and texting here open. Nice. Let me control the height value. Let me check the combined normal map. I don't want an intense height map here. Height normal, actually. I don't want an intense normal here. Great. So this is the text. Let's duplicate it and look for a triangle. This is nice. I'm rotating it, setting the blending mode as max. And place it like this. And now for this rectangle, I'm moving the scale like this, and it shows how the hatch will be open. What I have in mind is to move this around top. No, let's leave it that way. Great. I'm using secondary texts for the bottom part. Let me check for some ready to use texts for some handheld consoles to see how they are written on the backside of these devices. So I will looking for a Game Boy, battery specs, so it works with 4 AA batteries. So I am duplicating this text and position it here. Let me scale. Right. So let me add some warning messages. I'm looking for Google to see a text that I can find of. Yeah, we can change the text like this. I'm just copying this text from Google actually. So alignment should be left, but I need to make the positioning slided. There's a high level of distance between the lines, so I am going to remove one of them. Remove this two, move it manually to the bottom. Let's add one final text. Right. This text box is not easily selectable, I suppose. Every time I try to enter some texts, I find myself outside the text box. Very strange. Nice. Now we have a nice warning and specs for the battery hatch. Maybe one exclamation mark is enough. Let's move it to the bottom. Great. Now it has a serious look from here. Watch it once we complete the labels for the bottom part as well. Alright, so let's set the screen first with a simple material as a starter, which will be a black screen with low roughness, but we need to add an emissive channel for this material because we will be using some gaming screens on it. Let's set the emissive at black as a starter. So let's move on with the masked glass. I will set an opacity channel for that too. And next I will add a fill layer with a black color. Nice. Remove the roughness. I'm not sure why we are seeing the glass as, yeah, it explains it. We need to lower the opacity in a way too much. Let's keep it that way for now. And also let's check the ambient occlusion. That has to be removed because we have rebaked all the mesh maps. Yes, we have an ambient occlusion for the masked glass, so I removed it. And only the standard glass is left. Nice. So for the masked glass we have an opaque black shape, but I will add another fill layer by removing the opacity first, like this. But I will add some mask for it. To do that, I will use a black mask, add a fill layer. For that I will use a shape. Set the UV repeat as none. Let's increase the hardness. Using another levels to control the roundness. What I do here is setting a mask for the back side of the mask glass. Let me show you. This is the masked area that I created. So this part will be fully black, but inside will be transparent, like the glass on the front part. And this way I will set the opacity, let's make it 0, and for the glass I will set the opacity as 0 as well. Let me see if we can get any reflection. No. So I'm setting it as 0.02. I will do the same for the mask glass, like this. So we will be having a glass that has been masked from the back surface. Let's show everything. So under this mask we have the grainy surface and the general screen that we are having. Maybe we can change the overall size of this shape. Let me see, like this. Strange that it doesn't affect the result. I'm not sure why this is acting like that, but yeah, this works better. Oh, it's flipped, so I'm looking for the reverse sides when I was adjusting the actual part. Sorry for that. Nice. Now we are having the mask we have and the reflection over it, which is good. And our screen looks much better right now. Switching back to the texts. Right, let's copy one of these and switching to the UV section. I'm going to add the texts for this part. Alright, now we are adding texts for these parts, for the buttons. Maybe something like this works. Create some copies and create the positioning. Nice. Since our finger comes from this angle, the text positioning may be better with this layout. That is the purpose why I am doing like that. I will use lowercase, by the way. I really hate this text box. Actually, I can clearly say this. From the start of this tutorial, it gives me really hard time creating this. It mistakenly deletes all right. Y looks weird, so let's scale it a little. Right. I will change the color because it's too bright. Since this console looking much more serious thing, I will use it like that. Nice. So let's add a roughness channel for these texts as well. We can decrease the roughness value. Change the height a little bit. Nice. Much better. Looks great. So let's make a quick touch for the diffusers. We will not be using the textures that we are going to create here for these parts, but let's do it like maybe we can use, who knows. Let's try to create some texture for it first, then we decided how to move on. I'm adding both opacity and emission channels for these. And first let me copy the grainy texture for that. Switching to the diffusers, pasting the grain effect. Let's see how it looks. Nice so far. And let's make a color. Let's remove the color first. Actually, the color should be gray. A dark one, yeah. Opacity should be something like this. Nice. And we will be having fill layers just for the emission. Let's make it an empty layer. Add a paint. I will use a red emissive like this. I just want to control it better. For that I will use a fill layer with red emissive and use a mask for that. Like this. Add a paint. Set this as red. Duplicate this. Set this as yellow or orange. Set this paint. Let me remove the previous one for the bottom object. Nice. So let's adjust the opacity once again. Maybe the opacity is right, but the emissive is wrong. Let's hide those for now. Maybe we adjust the mask opacity. Adjusting the wrong one. Let me check once again. All right. I don't like the red. I will change it to yellow. Looks much better. All right. Now we will add some texts for these parts as well. Let me switch to the main body material ID. There. I will check the texts. Yes. No, this is the hash texts. I will look for Yes, this one. Let me add a name for it because it's getting hard to find what we are looking for. And for these, I will name these as texts. Let's create a copy of the existing text here and use some text here. One of them is power. Still can't write into this text box. Yeah, it's power. And I will copy the other one. As read. Let's make up an activity like read. So it reads the game. So I'm looking for the wrong part. What about moving these to here? No, it's not looking good. How about this? Looks better actually. Nice, yes. So if we turn off the lights for the LED diffusers, we end up with these colors, which is also good. We may be having a little bit roundness through here. Let's keep it to another project. Alright, so checking to see where we can continue creating additional texturing on this one. The one we can move on with the top label, the other one is the side part. And you know what? We forgot a fatal thing about this console because it has no game cartridge input right now. So I was thinking about it while texturing it, what we can do about it, because we can't do we can add some polygon modeling in Modo to fix an area to make some cartridge input part, or otherwise we can create this console as a built loaded with a built-in games inside its ROM. So you know that sometimes in 90s actually there were some consoles, clones, actually clone consoles has been selling by built-in games. So there were no cartridge input or any medium for them, but inside ROM contains within these devices was having some games like 100 or 200 games, or the clone of the games with the various types of hacks within. So it can be counted up to 1 million games in a one console of those times. But these were just the clone consoles. What we are creating is kind of unique. So this built-in game technique may not be working actually. So to fix that, I'm going to create a hole here, possibly, and add a CF card to load games for this machine. So this will be the part that will not disrupt our texturing workflow, because if we change the geometry within Solidworks, we need to reassign the UVs for the outer part, outer shell. That may cause problems on positioning these manually positioned texts. So I don't want it to be happen. So best way is to create a hash here in Modo and put a CF card or a custom-made cartridge there to load games for this device. So what I'm going to do is completing the texturing for this portable device, and next I will look for how to add games to this design. This happens when you don't make up your mind about what you are going to create. We start this project in an improvised way, so this kind of problems always happens when you're doing improvisation. But it's also a great way to improve ourselves on solving different problems at the middle of the workflow, which is the mostly common thing in the commercial projects. The client wants something different at the middle of the project and you need to solve it by yourself. This is kind of problem that's caused by ourselves, but a good practice for commercial problems, I suppose. So let's move on by completing the labels. And after the labels, we will look for how to fix the game medium problem or the absence for this device.